Good afternoon, Conversations. Welcome back to part three of our discussion on the movement. We're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. I want to make sure we have a distinction. We are not the Black Lives Matter organization. Uh, we're talking about the movement, all right? And so today we're going to highlight a discussion on the vote. And this is a salute to the late Congressman John Lewis, who fought so hard for the vote in our community. And this panel of distinguished gentlemen, and we may have one or two others that will join us in session. We're going to have a tremendous chat. I said, we got a comment already. My number one fan, my wife has already said, good afternoon. Bless you, dear. So just want to remind you right before we get started for all of you who can and will, if you will go to my Facebook page and like or follow, that way you can see these things that I'm doing. Also, my YouTube channel, Carl's Conversations. I broadcast these discussions mainly on that platform. So if you like, please go to subscribe so you can see the many videos that I have there. I do interviews on a couple different platforms, and I try to put as many as I can on that channel. So if you want to see what we're talking about, you can go to Carl's Conversations. You can also check out my Facebook page. I want to thank all of my family members who will be parts of this audience. I found out a few days ago how many of them do follow and actually watch. And I want to say hello to my aunties. All right, my aunt Phyllis and my aunt Debbie and my aunt Sheila. Thank you all for so much for watching. Also, Aunt Wendy down there in South Carolina. If there are any aunties that I forgot, don't be mad at me. I'll mention your name next time. All right, y'all. We have a tremendous panel. These three young men, and like I said, we may have a couple more that will join us in session, and I welcome them. So if you're watching and you haven't joined yet, Casey, come on in. All right. My man Ron James, if you're watching, you haven't joined yet, you're welcome to come on in. But right here we have Timothy Wright out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. We have Christopher Tucker out of Stafford, Virginia. And we have Mickey Leon out of Woodbridge, Virginia. And I'm going to give these gentlemen a couple minutes just to tell the audience a little something about themselves. And then we'll get right into the discussion. We'll start with Timothy Wright.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Timothy Wright Jr. Carl's like a big brother, and I'm very excited to be on this platform. It's my second time joining them, and just glad to be back.
All right. Thank you, sir. And we have Mr. Chris Tucker.
Good afternoon, family. My name is Christopher Tucker. This is also my second time being on with my big brothers, Carl and Tim. Uh, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation today.
Amen. And then we have last but not least the anchor on this one, Mickey Leon.
Hi, everybody. How are you? I'm Mickey Leon, Mickey Armstrong. For those of you that know me, Carl is my cousin. I'm honored to be a guest on his show today and looking forward to a great conversation.
All right, y'all. Before we came on air, we were teasing Mickey Leon about having that sexy microphone over there and sounding like the DJ of the Quiet Storm. So I know who to call when I need to do some commercial spots.
I got you. I got you.
I pay well too, bro. I ain't gonna ask you to do it for free. I pay well.
I got you.
All right, y'all. We have a pretty serious discussion going on here. And from our audience, those who may be new, my idea is to have a discussion, right? And just have you, the audience, to come along with us. We don't claim to be subject matter experts per se on any of this, but we do claim to be subject matter experts on our journey and our experiences. And that's what we're going to pour out today with you. I've been inspired today to do this portion of the discussion. There will be an ongoing discussion on Saturdays about the movement. This is installment number three. Was not able to do it last Saturday. So for those of you who are looking forward, we apologize. But today's powerful session should make up for that. I'm motivated to do something about voting in honor of the late Congressman John Lewis, who literally gave his life for this. And in this season, we see so many things, positive and negative, going on with the vote. Until I just wanted to take a moment to discuss it. I first wanted to start with just if each of the panelists could just give a few words concerning what the late Congressman John Lewis meant to them. And we'll start with Mr. Mickey Leon on this one.
Well, John Lewis meant a lot. As I grown and learned more about the civil rights movement and the different pieces of the civil rights movement and what these people went through, especially with him, he meant a lot, seeing the way he still, after all these years, fought just as hard as he did when he was younger, to see him stand up against people, like Donald Trump, not just to attack Trump, but, to defend the ideals of the civil rights movement and of all of those people who went, who gave their lives, freedom and dignity and everything for that movement. So it's really not a lot of words, can't really put it into words, like the significance of John Lewis and what he meant to myself, other Black people, and other people in general who don't even realize that he was fighting for them too, just because they may not look like we do. So, that's my take on it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tucker.
John Lewis, in short words, was a living legend. And not just him, but we also have to say rest in power to Reverend Corder Tyndale Vivian, who worked right there with him. And as a grandson of the movement, being from Birmingham, Alabama, whose family members participated in many of the marches, John Lewis, again, was a living history. And we should, again, both he and Reverend Vivian should be regarded right up there with the best of them.
Amen. Thank you for that. All right, Mr. Wright.
I guess it's somewhat of a mixed bag for me. I don't think I could enumerate all the good things because, I know the half hasn't been told as it pertains to all that he's done, all that he sacrificed, and definitely he was a living legend. I'm still in mourning because it appears to me yet another time that a giant is taken away, and then we're looking like who's to take that spot. And for me, my takeaway, or one of the many takeaways, how important it is to groom leadership and put them in place while you're still around, because that's a succession plan. That's how you make sure the march goes on and the fight continues. So it's a mixed bag for me, but I'm definitely sad about his passing.
Here. And I know we didn't talk about this right here, but since you brought that point up, I do want to use this panel time to discuss that. We know that Congressman John Lewis was one of the many elders in the Black community that we would listen to and look to as a leader. As that generation of leaders transitions into eternity, who do we look to now? Who are our leaders? I will say that, in my opinion, the movement has changed. It doesn't look today like it looked during the time of Dr. King. So, in your humble opinions, who are the leaders now, and what is your opinion of the leadership of the movement? And I'll start with you, Mr. Tucker.
Well, I think, and I've honestly called a lot of flack for this position, but I honestly don't think that we need a centralized or a singular person to be the head of the movement. I think all of us should be the head of the movement, give our collective voice to the movement, and us with one voice, speak truth to power. I think that having centralized leadership in the past worked for that time period, but I think that now, because we're not just or the movement is not just Black Americans or African Americans, but we have so many allies. This movement also now encompasses indigenous people, also include Latinx people. So we really should take a look at, can we do this all together with one voice, or at least with a common voice?
All right, Mr. Wright.
I have somewhat a different perspective. I feel when you attempt to become POC versus Black, and I'm not trying to say that other struggles don't really matter, but when it becomes minority or when it becomes POC, a lot of times the shift is diverted from struggles that are germane in that community. So I do feel there still needs to be some leadership. While I don't think that it necessarily needs to be one person, because we see what happens when it's one person. I just think that it needs to be a multifaceted approach where there are leaders in several areas. Imagine if Martin Luther King touched the hearts of 30 people and put them up and put a microphone in their hand, not only in the South, but in Watts, but in Chicago, but in Detroit, in New York, because it wasn't just a Southern struggle. Once he died, he would have had 30 bold soldiers that could infect or inseminate so many others. So I feel that there is leadership that's needed. And while we can have allies and work collectively on those things, we can't be detracted from what's actually happening to us personally.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Mickey Leon.
So I agree with both points. I do feel as though leadership has changed. The need for leadership has changed in this era now. I feel like we as Black people are always looking for a savior to come in and lead us in such a way. And I feel like that has been a part of the issue that we have had over the years is we're like, okay, who's going to be this person to come in, instead of realizing that we are this person to come in. You know what I mean? So there needs to be leadership in different areas, different ways for different things, but it doesn't need to be one centralized leader. So I feel like celebrities, Black celebrities like LeBron James, who are using their platform to get the word out. He's a great leader in that he's recognized the power of his platform, right? He's recognized the people that follow him and the influence that he has with those people. So he's a leader in that respect because people gonna follow what he says, right? So he can reach and get that message out to that demographic, that group of people. At the same time, you have people on the streets in Chicago who are not celebrities, so to speak, but they are local leaders in their area, right? So those are two different types of leaders, but they're both important. So we as a group of people who have this platform here, LeBron's platform, the local platform, we have to come together as a group and determine what do we want out of this? What are we looking for? What's our goal? So we put that together, and then all of our leaders in this era with the platforms that we have can then move towards those goals, for Black people. And I agree with what Timothy said in terms of when it switches from being about Black to POC, you could kind of get watered down, right? So not saying that we don't want to have leadership and, things right for all people of color. But if you look at a lot of those other groups, they have their quote unquote leaders already. They have their people who are in Congress pushing their legislation, pushing for things that they want, gay rights for other nationalities and whatnot. They have that. We don't have that. We have people that are Black in Congress and in other areas, but we don't have anybody that's funneling our specific community concerns and beating it into the heads of the politicians. I could go on and on. I'm gonna let up on that, but basically, yeah, leadership is important. But it's how we do it in 2020. We're sitting up here on Facebook Live, a group of people from all over Virginia, and we're reaching how many people. This is a platform that Martin Luther King didn't have. He had to work up to get to this type of at your fingers, thing. So, you think about it like that. We need leadership, but how we do it is different.
Amen to that. And we're thankful that Cassandra has joined us. The attorney is on with us, y'all. And so I'm going to give her just a minute to catch up. So the question to the panel was, and this was not a question that we had previously discussed, but since Timothy Wright brought it up, the question I asked was about leadership. Today's movement does not look like the movement of 50 and 60 years ago, where Dr. King was the leader of the nonviolent movement. It looks much different. And now that generation is dying off, and we're talking specifically, we just recently buried Congressman John Lewis, and his life and life's work is what spurred the topic of today's discussion, the vote. Now that generation is dying off, who will we look to for leadership, and if we need it? And just before you jump in, Cassandra, I'll give my little 2 cents. I think that we have a group of leaders here today. You look at these faces who are on, and once again, I'm interviewing millennials. I'm the old dude of the crew today, right? So really, these young faces are the face of today's movement leadership. And we know that. I want you to know, the guys and ladies my age and older, we do know that this is the movement of your generation. and we're just here to give guidance and to offer our resources, sometimes our money and our maturity to kind of give some guardrails to the movement, if you will. But I will tell you, I say this all the time, and I'll say it again. I belong to several groups up here in Northern Virginia, Stafford Black and Enough, the Stafford NAACP, and these organizations, especially Enough and Stafford Black, grassroots organizations that have a leadership team, and it's amazing because it's not overbearing or nothing like that. But we communicate regularly, we do things regularly, and we are making a big push in this area. And Chris Tucker can attest to it because he belongs to these groups with me, and we're making a significant change. So I think, unlike what we saw years ago, much of our leadership will be local grassroots leadership. But if you're not involved, you really don't see it. So you have to be involved to see it. And just like what we're doing now, all of us have differing gifts. Everybody won't be able to grab the bullhorn and lead a march. But there are people like my man Mickey Leon down there who are experts when it comes to the social media thing and the media platform. I do not claim to be an expert. I learn every time I come on, but I do have a voice. We are leaders. You get in where you fit in, you use what God gave you to do something positive. And I don't spend a lot of time on what I disagree with. And believe me, I see plenty of things that I disagree with. I don't spend a lot of time on that because I want to keep pressing on where we do have agreement. So, Cassandra, welcome. If you could just take just a moment to tell the audience a little bit about you, and then you can jump in on this leadership thing.
Hi, yes, I'm Cassandra Ramsey. I'm an attorney, licensed in Washington, D.C., in the D.C. metro area. I practice business law, intellectual property law. To the point about leadership, I think that something that often gets lost in the conversation when we talk about the 60s is that, yes, we had central leadership with Martin Luther King, but the stories that don't get told are those little grassroots groups and everything that came up during that time, like those little pockets of stories. And I think too, because we didn't then have the platforms that we have now through social media, those stories they get lost. So it seems like we just had one central focalized leadership group, and to an extent we did, but we also had Stokely Carmichael, Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, who were all leaders in their own right, all pushing for the same things, just be it in a different way. And I think that we have that going on today. As you have Colin Kaepernick with the kneeling, who brought attention to the issue. And then you have Black Lives Matter start, who put people on the ground, addressing the issue that Colin Kaepernick was bringing everybody's attention to.
All right, we thank you for that. She jumped right in, y'all. Cassandra, you're making the boys look bad. You're making us look bad. All right, y'all.
That's my sister. I have to point out. That's my little sister.
My little sister.
She got it from me.
That's just that good old black girl magic. That's all.
That's right. I would agree.
Indeed,
I would agree. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. That went a different direction, but that's what I love about these kind of discussions. We can just talk about it. Well, listen, we know there's a lot going on right now that looks to be like voter suppression, if you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. But I'm so glad that we do live in the state of Virginia. Virginia has come up through the leadership of our House and State Senate and our governor. We have some new voter laws, and I want to go through them real quick, and we'll talk about it. All right. So we got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. I'm going to hit on them real quick. All right. Number one is early voting. We can now vote 45 days prior to the election without a stated excuse. Previously, if you were an absentee ballot user, which means that you were in the military or you were a Virginia resident living somewhere else, and there was an approved list of reasons why you had to use that type of ballot. Now that list is gone. Anyone who wants to vote by mail-in vote, you can do that up to 45 days early. And I will tell you that if you plan on doing that, it would be a good idea to actually go to the governor's website, or you can go to the Commonwealth Virginia Secretary of State, website or your local voting registrar, and you can get your application there for your ballot to be sent to you, and then you can fill that out. And 4 to 5 days prior, you can send that in. All right, that's one of the changes. Another thing was the voter ID. In the state of Virginia, you no longer need a picture ID. Now, I will tell you that picture ID is always the best way to do it. But if you have documentation like a utility bill, your voter registration receipt, um, a paycheck, or any type of government documentation with your name on address on it, that will suffice as proving your residency so that you can vote in that particular precinct. If you do not have that, you will have to sign a document stating that you do swear under the penalty of perjury. Excuse me, not perjury, with the penalty of violating law, which is a felony. Voter fraud is a felony. You have to sign that document saying that you are who you are, and if all else fails, you will be given a provisional ballot. But in no way will you be turned away on election day. Okay, so we know that no photo ID is necessary. Also, voting day, election day in the state of Virginia is now a holiday. It takes the place of the Lee Jackson holiday. The Lee Jackson holiday has been done away with, and in place of that, election day in Virginia is now a state holiday. Somebody say hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Kill two birds with one stone on that one. All right. And then another thing, which is really good, anytime you do anything with the DMV, whether it be in person or online, your information is automatically available to the voting registration information. There is always a statement that you can check the box to say, I don't want my information used for that. But if you don't check that box, your information will go to the voter registration in your locale, and you'll be registered through that. I think that's an awesome thing. Also, the expanded absentee ballot timeline. If your absentee ballot, and that's any type of mail-in ballot, if it is postmarked by the day of the election and is received by noon, by the third day after the election, it will be counted. I'll say again, your absentee ballot must be postmarked by election day. But y'all, please don't wait till election day. If it is postmarked by election day and received no later than noon on the third day after election, it will be counted. And finally, this one here, this is the polling hours. The polls will close now at 8 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. You would think that stuff like that would have been the way it should have been all along, right? But voting in this country has always been a little different. So I want to get your opinions on what you think about those things, and I'm going to start with the lady. Come on, Casey, what do you think about those new voter laws? Even though you do live in Maryland.
Yeah, I think that those are all steps in the right direction. I think that making voting a statewide holiday is a major step to help people be able to vote. How many times do you want to vote, but your work hours are voting? You have to go to work, and it's hard for you to get back to the poll. Well, now for most people, with it being a holiday, they won't have that problem. I think that getting rid of the voter ID requirement helps as well. I agree with you that having an ID is the best way to go about doing it, but I think it kind of takes some of the intimidation away with you going to register to vote. And what's the other one? The voter ID.
Also, this extension of the voting hours.
Yeah.
Also, being able to vote absentee 4 to 5 days prior, and the holiday. You covered all of them. You did a great job.
All right.
All right, Mr. Mickey Leon.
All right, so I think that the expansion of all of the voting laws is definitely impactful. It's even more impactful coming from Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy, and the things that Virginia has historically faced. Getting rid of the Lee Jackson holiday, which as many of you may not know, I don't know if you do, but Virginia for a long time refused to acknowledge Martin Luther King Day as its own holiday. It was Lee Jackson King Day for quite a while, and then they moved it. But getting rid of it, that's a great move. Um, Restoring rights is another topic, but just being able to expand and end work to end voter suppression by adding these measures in, especially with this upcoming election. It's great. I mean, I know people in Virginia who have had issues with working and getting to the polls at time. I mean, I work all the way in DC, but live in Virginia. So it's been a couple of times where I was running into the polling place at 6:59 with the lady holding the door saying, come on, come on. As long as you're in the door, you can make it. So, stuff like that, it's important. It's little things, when you look at it, but it's the little things that make the biggest difference when it comes to people like us needing to vote, our people needing to vote, because we have the jobs where we have shift work, and we are getting off work. Sometimes we're getting off work at 7 o'clock. You work a 4 to 7 shifts in a grocery store or something like that, and you have to deal with your kids prior to that. It could be very difficult. So I think we are making steps in the right direction. There's still a lot of things that need to be done. This is a win. Enjoy the win in the moment that it happens, but don't let it be the end. Look at it as a starting point.
Amen. Mr. Tucker.
I agree with everybody. I love, especially love the automatic registration of voters, but I think we still have one more hurdle to cross, and that is same day registration. If you look, if, for example, election day is November 3rd, if my birthday is November 3rd and that's my 18th birthday, I cannot vote or cast my first vote until the next election cycle. And I think that is a disenfranchisement of potential voters on whatever side of the aisle you may fall on. I think that we should have same day voter registration.
All right, man. Mr. Wright.
I could be wrong, but I think the same day registration is coming in 2022 in Virginia. So they, from what I read, they weren't able to roll that out as quickly because they wanted to give localities time to come up with a system to make that happen. So that's at least on the books. But I can say that I'm very proud of the progress Virginia is making. I was having a conversation with my dad, I think either this morning, I think it was this morning or yesterday, and just asking how I felt about the governor, rating him 1 through 10. And I said I'd give him a solid 8.5 and 9, just because these things are very strong, not only making this a holiday, but Juneteenth. I think a lot of times I have been guilty of, and I just think it's because of Willie Lynch. It's like you get something, and then you think of a reason why it's not good, or they're just trying to get my vote. They're just like, take it as it is. Like Mickey said, take the win. But the win means nothing if we don't vote. So like, if you have that shift job, but you know that you have 45 days to vote in advance, what's your excuse? So I just feel like these are those opportunities where we're given something on a silver platter. What are we going to do with it? We have to vote.
Right. All right, y'all. I got to ask this question. Here we go. All right. We have heard what has come out of the White House. Our president has floated the idea that maybe we need to push back the date of the election because he believes there will be massive fraud when it comes to voting by way of the absentee ballot or the mail-in ballot. And of course, for those of you who follow the news, you know that there was a big problem in New York's primary election because they normally handle about 30,000 mail-in ballots. This time they had about 400,000. So they're saying that the postal system was not ready. And because of COVID-19 and all the restrictions, the voting apparatus, those volunteers who normally work the polls and all that kind of stuff, are very limited because people just didn't want to do it because of the exposure. So before I release the microphone, I want to make sure I don't belong to either one of the parties. I am fiercely independent. This is not necessarily a partisan question. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, I don't care. I'm asking the question, and I would like your answer. And I'm going to start with Mr. Tucker.
Um, um, I'm sorry, I had to take a deep breath because that is very, even thinking about it is very frustrating and upsetting. Um, there has been numerous organizations who have conducted studies, even the Postal Service, numerous elections committees, to include the Federal Elections Committee, to debunk the myth that widespread voter fraud will be happening in November. Even going back through past election data, they've seen that voter fraud is not as widespread as it is being pushed to believe. And so I think this is just another tactic to discourage voting. And I think that it is a very weak argument to present. And I think that there's going to be a rude awakening come November 3rd with the sheer amount of votes that are cast. Yes, and more than likely, we will still be dealing with COVID-19. And yes, we'll still probably have many more mail-in ballots, but I think that municipalities have been looking at New York and saying, okay, this looks to be our reality as well. What do we have to do? What do we have to put in place in order to make sure that we are prepared for this situation? So I don't think anybody has to be concerned. I think everybody should ignore the noise and go out and do your civic duty, do your God-given right, and cast your ballot.
Amen. All right, Miss Cassandra, what say you?
I agree. I think it's also important to note that Trump can't move the election on his own. Like, he can't make that arbitrary decision to postpone the election. Um, I really agree a lot with what Chris said. It's just another distraction, something to deter the conversation. Let's not lose the fact that he made that tweet on the day that we buried John Lewis. As another, I don't know, I feel like attention getting mechanism from him. So I wouldn't personally put a lot of stock into it. I would put more stock into making sure that I was ready to have my vote counted in November.
Wow.
Totally agree.
All right. All right, Mr. Mickey Leon, what say you, sir?
So I am, and I would say this too. I don't necessarily identify Republican or independent. I mean, a Republican or Democrat, more so independent. I feel like many middle class educated Black people would fall in that category. Anyway, just because many of us agree with some Democratic things, some Republican things, but in the middle, a lot of things, a lot of room there. Mail-in voting. So personally, that is not a decision that I would make. I don't, I'm not for it. It should definitely be there. People should be able to do it. I personally do not think it's a great idea in this particular election, because I do agree with Trump in voter fraud via mail being a huge possibility. And the reason I say that is not because I feel like Democrats are going to be the ones to utilize it. Republicans, Mitch McConnell, I feel like that group would be the ones to use it and slant it towards Donald Trump in this particular election. It has not been an issue in other elections because, I mean, arguably, I don't think that many of the other elections have had the potential. They've had impacts in their own right. But what we're facing right now it's bigger than it's different. It's just different with him and what he stands for and what he has brought out, the scum that he has brought to the surface, those types of people that he's brought to the surface. It's just different, and they will stop at nothing to have him and have power again. So I feel like if you are able to vote, if you are truly able to get in your car, go to your polling place and do it in person, I feel like you need to go do it in person, because as you said, if they get your vote, as long as it's by noon, 3 days after the vote, it'll be counted. How do we know that these votes are counted? I've always wondered, how do we know that these votes are really counted, and what's to stop whomever at the postal office from not bringing that basket of votes in a highly democratic area where it's super important. What's to stop that? People that need to do it, do it. I don't need to do it. I can get in the car. My polling place is down the street. I personally, I'm not telling people don't, risk it. If you feel like you're at risk for COVID and it's just more than what you want to do, absolutely do what you do to feel safe. But please, I would say, do not feel like, okay, well, there's no chance that anything could possibly happen with these votes, so I'm just not gonna go in and do it. I personally feel like that's the wrong thing to do. I feel like mail-in votes should be used for people that have absolutely no other choice. And especially in an election like this, because both sides fight dirty. Democrats tend to allow themselves to take way more of a beating for some reason in a lot of areas, and Republicans do what they got to do to win. Whether it's dirty or not, they do what they have to do to win, and they have been masterful at convincing their party and the people who support them that they are victims when they are absolutely not. So again, I got more. I could keep going, but I won't. I would say this: if you can vote by mail, do it early, do it right. If you can go to the polls, just go to the polls, please. Go early as you possibly can. Just go. That's my opinion. So,
all right. Just before we bring Brother Wright in, I want to make sure I say something. First of all, thank you, Mr. Mickey Leon. That was an interesting take. And let me tell y'all something. Once again, the only prep I do before these interviews is to sometimes give a cursory explanation of the topics. I don't try to prep anybody's answer. I love the spontaneity of the discussion. So you can hear anything, right? Whether you agree or disagree, that's not what we're here for. We're here to have a conversation. And sometimes in conversations, you don't agree with everything you hear, right? That's what it is. I'll say this though, Mickey Leon brought up a tremendous point when it came to, the mail carriers. And to be quite honest with you, I had not thought about that. But let me say this one more time. I'm gonna say it real slow and real clear. Voter fraud is a felony. If you do not believe that it's serious and you do not believe that you'll be prosecuted, do a little research on those who have been caught dealing with voter fraud. They all go to the federal penitentiary. It is not nice. And this season, be a snitch. Snitching is cool. If you see anybody, and I don't care whether the Democrat or Republican, if they're trying to cheat, tell it. I am. And another thing, it need to be a whole lot of faces that look like the faces on this panel who will volunteer to be poll workers. I'm gonna grab my mask and my praying oil, and I'm raising my hand, and I will be right there, and I will be right there to make sure that it was supposed to happen will happen. I'm gonna do my part, and I hope that as this panel discussion circulates, that people will see this and be motivated to also volunteer. Where you live, be a volunteer, go work the polls, learn what's going on, and do what's right. All right, Brother Wright is in your hands.
When I think of Donald Trump, there's certain things that create awe with me, not necessarily in a good way. And then there's certain things that just make me scratch my head, to be quite honest. But one thing that I see that he's very masterful at, and this goes all the way back to the Central Park Five. He's very skillful in starting dumpster fires and stepping back and letting people fight. I think he knows what he can do and what he can't do, but it's not really about making it happen. Like everyone said, it's about creating distraction. But I think we're so focused on the distractions and calling out his distractions, we don't look at what's really being done. The Postmaster General, I think his name is Louis DeJoy, something like that. He's put key people in all of his cabinets that are really there to eviscerate and gut whatever those cabinets or whatever those entities of the government are for. And like this Postmaster General was just a businessman and a big donor. So now you're the Postmaster General. He didn't like the Postal Service anyway because he's at odds with my man Jeff Bezos, Donald Trump, because of the Washington Post. He doesn't like the coverage. And he was talking about how the Postal Service was being Jeff Bezos' messenger boy. But I'm thinking he's giving you business. So then Jeff Bezos just went and started his own Amazon delivery company, and now that's billions that the Postal Service lost. But I said all that to say, the Postmaster General has gutted so much funding from the Postal Service that's going to lead to more delays in the mail, and it's going to lead to longer, less workers to actually process the mail and process the ballots. So I agree with Mickey. Like, if you can get to the polls, that's going to be the most important route to go, or the best route to go, because the postal system's already compromised. So it is a good thing that we have these laws that are rolled out, but the system is already set up to create issues down the road. So I would just say that while all of this is good, go to the poll if you can. Really, register early. Make sure you go to the poll. And one more thing is very interesting. He doesn't want to, back down from, mail-in voting because of a health crisis. He's more concerned about voter fraud. But he's voted how many times absentee ballots? Even in Wisconsin, the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin, they didn't want to advance, rolling back the primary vote. They made it stand, but all of those justices voted with absentee ballots. They weren't going in the polls. In Milwaukee, I think they normally had like 180 polls open, but they only had 5 open for the whole city. So I just think now is the time to get on the offensive and really make sure that things are in place for that election day. So I'm all for, the mail-in voting if that's what you have to do, but that's not the route that I would take if I could actually stand in line and vote. I don't know if that answered the question, but just thoughts that are on my mind.
Go ahead, Chris.
And I would also add on to that, people, please be reminded that if you are in line when the polls close at 8:00, they cannot turn you away. So if you are going out there and you are standing in line, I know especially in Northern Virginia, we have a very, very, very ridiculous traffic situation up here, even with all of the construction stuff that's going on. If you are standing in line at 8:00, they
All right,
cannot
here
turn you
is
away.
an open mic question. And I know this might be a hot one, and I'm not trying to start them per se, but we're living in it. And I just want to know what you think. Do you think that there's some mud in the water when it comes to what's happening with the postal system? There are some who believe that the slowdown is kind of like an intentional thing to do to discourage mail in balloting and to make it a mess so that those votes will not count and some schniggity can be declared in the election. What is your opinion on that? Open mic question. Go ahead, sir.
So I do think that that's a part of it. However, the slowdown in the mail postal system has started before Trump. The money being removed from the postal system started before Trump. I have friends who work for the postal system, and their jobs started to get kind of funny and shaky before him. Now, I do feel like this is something they've latched onto it. And now, as Donald Trump has always done, he's always made excuses prior to the event happening, right? So they're using this, I think, so that it can be an excuse. So create the funding issues, delays in the mail, so that if something does happen with these elections and he loses, then we can bring up all of these issues, right? There's funding issues. Mail may have been lost. I was just reading an article a moment ago before we got on where, key people in the postal service were saying that, they've run into issues already where all the mail has not been collected, or they found mail left on the floor, and they've said that it's because they have less workers to process the mail. So yeah, I don't feel like they started the issue with the intent of having some type of voter fraud or voter issue, but I feel like they were smart enough to see that this is a growing issue. Now we're coming into COVID, and we can make enough noise for reasonable doubt. So, that's kind of what I feel.
Wonderful. Just before we go on, I just want to remind our audience you are free to ask a question or make a comment. And I'm doing my best to post those comments so everybody can see it. If you have a question, please ask it. Kashif did offer something that I'm going to come back to. I'm thanking our audience, Kashif and Ron James and Monica Gary and Tisha and Paulette. Please keep the comments and questions coming. All right, still that open mic question. What do you think about what's going on with the postal system? Anybody else?
I I mean, I kind of alluded to it before. I do believe that, like the postal system, the Department of Education, the Department of Justice, I just feel there are some very sus people that have been placed in those positions of power to pretty much take away the strength of said agency or said department. But I also feel that the Postal Service is one business that is actually a business of the government. And the government is not good at money. Well, I meant to say the government's not good at business. It really hasn't done much to try, profit. So I think, like what Mickey alluded, it's been money issues for a long time. But at the end of the day, I still think that they will exploit the weakness if they can detect it. So while I don't feel that the slowdown is necessarily to delay voting online, I feel that the slowdowns will be exploited to delay. And just like you said, it'll just be something that'll be used early on. Once he sees that he's losing with these ballots, then it's going to be a long standoff. It's going to be a recount, a revote, and then going throughout. Like I said, I just feel that it's going to be exploited, but I don't think it's primarily the reason why.
All right. Mr. Tucker, you took your mute off.
Yes, because I think that Tim said it right the first time when he said that the government is not good with money. And for me, there's a couple of things that you don't play with. My time and my money are right up there with the same thing. So the government is absolutely not good with money, in my opinion. And yes, this is voter suppression at its finest, right? And for me, I saw kind of this happening in the Florida's governor's race, where you had Ron DeSantis actually losing to Mayor Gilliam down in Florida, but because of all of the votes and revotes and there were a lot of mail-in ballots that were not counted that still years later have not been counted, and they blatantly said they were not going to count them, just so that they can declare Ron DeSantis as the winner. And so I think that we have to go back, and I think we have to look at that as a case of Florida and say, okay, again, to echo Mickey, if you can go to the polls, please do so. But please, let's not become captive to, and I hate to use this, but let's not be captive to the white noise, and not vote at all.
Amen. All right,
I was I was just gonna echo that last point you made about not voting at all. I do agree with Tim that the weakness will be exploited. And I just wanted to just say that we cannot allow ourselves to become apathetic. We're looking at all of the fallacies in the system, right? But we still have to remain vigilant and willing to put up with those things so that we can make sure that our vote is counted.
I tell you what, I am so impressed with this panel, and it appears that our audience is too. I enjoy all of your comments. Now, Kashif said something in one of his comments, and I want to deal with it. Let me go back up and see if I can find it. Kashif said, I have no problems with the voting laws per se. It's the voting system that's damaged. Now, he's not on the panel to tell us exactly what it means, but does anybody have any insight on that? And y'all are just smiling. So, all right, Lil Right, you raised your hand. Come on, sir.
Man, I agree. I just look at it from two different ways. One of my dark horse candidates for this whole primary season, one that I knew wouldn't have a chance, but I really believed in a lot of what he was saying, was Andrew Yang, for many reasons. But one of the things he was saying was for a country to be as advanced as we are in technology, and for us not to figure out a way to do this securely, when we can file taxes, we can do everything else very securely with the IRS, what makes voting so difficult? This is a way that we can make sure that we include a lot of people. But with that being said, and I don't know if this is something that we're going later on, every time we're given a law, and when I say we, I guess I should be specific to say black people. Let's just talk about that. You're given something in one hand and it's taken away in the other. Just that quick. 1965, you get the Voters' Right Act. And then that's about weakened because they come up with ways around it. So then you have to get new measures put in, and then it has to be renewed. Then it has to be renewed. Then it has to be renewed. Like if I'm supposed to be able to vote, why can't I just vote? Why do we have to keep renewing laws to make it hard for you to do what it is that you've been doing anyway? Like a focus down in Florida. This year, they may not be allowed to vote that had their rights restored once they got out of jail, but because they have back payments on child support or other minor debts, they're not going to be able to vote. That's a poll tax. So when I think of the system, like in theory, a lot of these things, they do make sense. They do make it seem fair. Oh, well, you can have the mail-in voting, you can have this, you can have that. But so many ways it's taken away just as soon as it's given. So those are the things that I feel when it comes to the system that we really have to be mindful of. And we have to make sure that we give due diligence, not just to accept what we see on the surface, but really dig in a little deeper and really see, what more is there to it than what we see. So I don't know. I can understand what he's saying.
All right, go ahead. Take your time on it, Mickey. Take your time.
So I was gonna say this. Yeah, the system needs to be changed. First of all, let me say this. Every law in this country works the way that it was supposed to work. It works the way that it was intended. It just wasn't intended for us, black people. Even the laws that gave us our right to vote, as you said, you have to keep renewing laws and they find ways around it. They all work the way they're supposed to work. We just aren't supposed to find our ways around them. That's the thing. The way we vote in this country is backwards. It's stupid, but it's also a system that is in place, in my opinion, to be able to keep close reign and close control over who's in office and what happens, how it happens. The Electoral College. I mean, like, do I even need to say anything more than that? How you have a group of people who only recently, like there's a couple states, and I want to misquote because I don't have the number in front of me, but there were several states that just recently, I think July 1st, passed laws that held their electoral voters to actually voting with the state. These states, and I want to say there was like maybe 16 of them, I believe, they didn't have to vote with the state if they didn't want to. So your state is telling you, I want candidate A, but these electoral voters could legally decide that they don't like candidate A and vote for candidate B. Like, what sense does that make? So yes, the system itself absolutely needs to be changed, but it's in place to do exactly what it's doing and hold in place who gets what and when they get it. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot there, but there's so much. And one last thing I would say this, a lot of it, I feel like, so there's a generation, actually there's a couple generations ahead of my generation, millennial generation, who is in power, right? And they don't want to lose power. Understandably, nobody wants to give up power. Nobody wants to lose power. That is really and truly the battle and the struggle that we are fighting right now. It is the battle of the generations, and the older generations not wanting to lose power, not wanting to let go of what they remember as their way of life, not wanting all of those things to happen. And then you have our generation, millennial generation, the last half of Gen X, and the generation, the Tide Pod generation, whatever they are, that's coming up behind us. You have them, we're like, you guys don't represent us. You can't be 80 years old and claim to represent us as a people. You are fighting things like Facebook and wanting to ban TikTok, and you don't even know what it is.
Right.
Like, so, that, and again, another conversation, but that's where we are. That's where we are.
Hey, man. Anybody else? All right. I tell you
What
something.
I was trying to give Cassandra time to jump in because it looked like she had something.
All right, go ahead, Chris. Cassandra, you had something?
Sorry. No, you can go ahead, Chris. If you
All
have
right.
Okay. Well, I kind of want to go back to something that Tim said, and that was about the restoration of voting rights. And I know
We're
that we're
covering that
probably
right
going to
now.
cover this at some point too. But okay, well, let's do it. This is something that I personally believe is a severe injustice because when we again the criminal justice system was set up for a reason, and that was to take society's offenders, rehabilitate them, release them back into society as rehabilitated people, right? And so, what the criminal justice system has morphed into, unfortunately, is minorities and other well, we're just gonna say black people and other minorities, particularly Hispanic people, right? They're one getting all of these unfair sentences, one, right, that puts them incarcerated at longer periods of time than other ethnic groups. So and then okay, so yes, I committed this particular crime. Okay, yes, I went to prison and I paid my debt to society. But the impact of that sentence is still felt after you come out. Now I can't vote. Now I can't do this. As Tim said, now I'm still behind on my back child support. Why? Because I now don't have a job to pay my child support. Why? Because I've been locked up for so long, right? But so all of this is working together, and then on top of that, I cannot vote, right? Something so simple as voting has been taken away from me. But wait a minute, I thought I paid my debt to society. You see what I'm saying? So now we're continuously disenfranchising, we're continuously punishing people for things that they supposedly paid their time and paid their dues for. That is severely unfair and severely unjust, and even another clear example of voter suppression, especially among minority groups.
You got it. Anybody else want to chime in? Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to say this is something along the lines I think Cassandra said earlier. All of this feeds my vote doesn't count because I think that's ultimately that's the real voter suppression. Yeah, I can play with polls. Yeah, I can do little things with poll taxes. I can do this. I can do that. But if I can take a block of people and do these little things over time, they'll lose the value or losing the value in the worth of their vote. And I just feel ultimately that's what the system is. Just like Mickey said, it wasn't set up for us. So that's why I say while we get these things, like the voting laws that we got passed in Virginia, they're great, but they don't mean anything unless we exercise that right and we hold those accountable that are supposed to be guardian of said laws to make sure they don't sneak something else in.
That's right. I'm gonna take a moment just to read something about voting rights being restored in Virginia. And Cassandra, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna come to you. I know that you are a Maryland resident, and I don't expect you to be a subject matter expert, but whatever you can tell us about restoration of voting rights in Maryland, I would appreciate it. So I'm gonna read this, and this comes from the Secretary of the Commonwealth, the restoration site. Anyone convicted of a felony in Virginia automatically loses their civil rights, not just the right to vote. You lose your civil rights. And while I'm reading, I'll put up Monica's comment. All right. The right to vote, serve on a jury, run for office, become a notary public, and carry a firearm. I'm going to read that again. Anybody convicted of a felony in Virginia automatically loses their civil rights: the right to vote, serve on a jury, run for office, become a notary public, and carry a firearm. The Constitution of Virginia gives the governor the sole discretion to restore civil rights, not including firearm rights. Individuals seeking restoration of their civil rights are encouraged to contact the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office. You see, let me read this. To be eligible for the restoration of civil rights, an individual must have a felony conviction and be free from any term of incarceration and/or supervision resulting from felony convictions. The Secretary of the Commonwealth gives priority consideration to individuals who request restoration of their civil rights. An individual seeking restoration of their civil rights may contact the Secretary of the Commonwealth using the button below, or by calling the 804 692 0104. I'm going to give that number. I'll also create that number on the banner. So you can contact the Commonwealth attorney by way of the website, or you can call 804-692-0104. The Secretary of the Commonwealth's office has identified individuals who may meet the governor's standards for restoration of rights, and those individuals will be considered for possible restoration in order of when they are released from supervision. So I'm going to say this before we continue. Please listen very closely. If you are a convicted felon in the state of Virginia, and we know that your voting rights, along with several other civil rights, have been suspended, you don't have them. Now is the time. You have a friendly governor, right? As long as you meet the criteria, your right to vote most likely will be restored. You must apply. Please go to the Commonwealth attorney. I mean, what is this? The Secretary of the Commonwealth website. If you don't know how to do it, grab somebody who knows how to do it, or you can call 804-692-0104. Start the process now. Today is August 1st. The election is November 3rd. There's a process. All right. You don't want to wait till the last minute. Get it done. All right. All right. I said we're coming to Cassandra. You gonna help us out there, cousin?
Yeah, so I don't know a lot about Maryland voting laws, but just as soon as you said that, I hit Google and found on the State Board of Elections website in Maryland where it addresses the restoration of voting rights in Maryland. And the question is, can I have my voting rights restored in Maryland if I have previously been convicted of a felony? And the answer is, effective March 10, 2016, if you have been convicted of a felony and have completed serving a court-ordered sentence of imprisonment, you are eligible to register to vote. Then the next sentence says you do not qualify to register to vote if you have been convicted of buying or selling votes. So that's all the information that I have about registering to vote in Maryland. So it seems that there is an option for you if you've completed your sentence. So I would definitely get onto the Maryland State Board of Elections website and, go further into looking up what you can do to have your rights restored.
All right. Mr. Wright, Mr. Tucker, y'all got anything to add to that?
Well, I want to call it for what it is. I want to call it slavery. To me, this goes back to the 13th Amendment, which says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime, shall exist in the United States or its territories. Which means that once the moment,
say that one more time. Say it real slow. I want the audience to get that, please.
Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime, shall exist in the United States or its territories. Which means that the moment that you become convicted of a crime and your civil rights, to include the right to vote, are stripped from you, you are now a legal slave to the United States government.
Wow.
Remember that.
A documentary that explains exactly what Chris was talking about is Ava DuVernay's 13th, that I believe is still on Netflix.
Absolutely. It
is that very provision that he is talking about in the 13th Amendment.
Cassandra, we have a person who was going to be a part of the panel. They couldn't make it, Mr. Ron James. He is listening and watching. He's going to love it because he told me a few weeks ago, man, before you do your next panel, you got to go watch 13th. He was right. I did watch it. I hadn't seen it before. And I'm going to tell you, if you want to understand the votes and many other things about our history, go watch that documentary along with many others. And I think that one of the great things that's coming out of the current movement is all of us are learning some of the true history of our country that we were not taught in school. The public school system did not do a very good job of teaching us the truth. And some are now twisting that to say that, it's indoctrination and, we're trying to say negative things about our forefathers. I think the indoctrination was what they taught us. And now the truth is coming out. And somebody say amen.
Absolutely. Amen.
One point I do want to make about the laws in the system is that the laws beget the system, right? So if you look at the Voting Rights Act of 1965, where one of the provisions was locales having to have their voting rights rules approved before they could enforce them. Then you fast forward to 2013, and they were able to sue and get the case heard in the Supreme Court that gutted that provision, right? And now we're going again through the system with introducing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to restore that. So that proves, and you can just see how clearly the laws, beget the system. And if we want that provision restored, we have to go out here and vote on November 3rd so that we can put the people in Congress that's gonna restore it.
Go ahead, sir.
So
Mickey, I think Mickey wants to say something.
All right.
okay, so what I was going to say was, the statement about prison and slavery. Yes, I was going to touch on that. Prison is absolutely modern day slavery, and watching 13th will explain that. Period. Taking it this whole conversation, right? A point that would kind of bring it full circle is what we talked about leaders in the very beginning. So leadership in our community is needed, and it's needed, and it can really help to show Black people how voting impacts us and why it's important. Stuff like getting your vote, getting your right to vote restored, things of that nature. So your local leaders and things of that nature who, if they're looking for something to do or want to know how can I get started, teaching the people about how voting actually matters and how that impacts us. I mean, being able to have your rights restored in Virginia. We have a governor right now, like you said, a friendly governor who is willing to do that. That may not be the case next time, but you need to go out here and vote so you can make sure that is your loved ones who are incarcerated. They can do that, right? So the other point is that since Black folks make up a large part of the prison system and Black folks vote Democratic, overwhelmingly, that is one issue, one reason why they don't want to restore our vote, our right to vote afterwards. If the prison system was made up of white men who vote Republican, their votes would be restored as they are processing their paperwork to walk out the door. So, that's something that needs to be taught in the community. Like, look, we don't, you walk around and say, I'm woke, I don't want to vote. We all vote. I'm gonna hold up my vote hostage and all of this stuff, which is super ignorant. The leaders need to go out there and show people this is what you risk by not voting. It's not just 45 being in office. Okay, fine. He's up there. Fine. The people that come with him that are put in office in more local places, those people, that's important. And this is why it's important for you. You might think your vote doesn't matter, but you get out here and you go to work. You get out here and you do these things. And you feel like you're living your life. You're living your life within the confines of the law that is set by the people that you vote for. So that was the point that I wanted to make. The leadership, bringing it back full circle, we need leaders. And that's the type of stuff that leaders can do, especially for the younger generation and young folks who are coming up in this social media generation. And they see, people online, people like Nick Cannon, Diddy, when he was saying, we holding our vote hostage. No, y'all are rich and you got money. Don't teach my child that might look up to you for the things that you have. Do not speak that to my child and make them think that that is an option for them, because I don't own a record label. I don't have all this money where, the vote is important, but it's a whole hell of a lot easier when you're walking around with $1 billion in your pocket, as opposed to somebody that got to get up and go to work every day. And I got to ride by these cops up and down 95 every day and risk getting pulled over by these cops when I pull through these gates at my job every day. And they literally have the power right now to do whatever they want to do to me. And I don't have a platform to stop them.
Go
ahead.
What are you holding your vote hostage for? Like what?
That's the whole Black agenda. But I'm not gonna take over his show like this, where we get into the quote unquote Black agenda that they want every candidate to have. That's another hour's topic right there. I ain't even going to.
Oh man.
Yeah, 2 hours.
Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead. You got the microphone.
Man, he just gave me like 3 points to say, and I won't say all of them. But the first thing, when it comes to Black leadership, you alluded to it earlier. I'm gonna say this very quickly. As a teacher, I feel that just because I'm in front of the classroom doesn't mean I'm their teacher. Just because they're on my roll doesn't make me a teacher. This is their teacher. When it comes to so many celebrities that can speak with ignorance, even if they're well-intended, it's still ignorance. That's really what's driving a whole lot of our young people. So, do I feel that leadership has changed over time? Yes. I think that it's in the hands of some very capable people, but I also think that there are some people that have a lot of influence. When you think of these TikTok or Twitter or Instagram have millions of followers, they have access to a whole lot of people. And even if they're not meaning to be, it's very nefarious, some of the things that they do and some of the things that they say. So that's as it pertains to that. Now, when it comes to vote, I know that we're talking about this presidential election, but in order for the political system to work for us, you can't just focus on every 4 years. Not only can you just focus on election day, you need to focus on primaries too, but you also need to focus on census. Why? Because all of it is tied together. It's all inextricably linked. One thing builds upon the other. When you have people that aren't filling out census, that's going to determine the size of your state by population. That's going to determine how many representatives you get to have in Congress. But if you're not doing that, what good is it? When you think of our state legislatures, you look at a map that shows the state legislatures. The country is red from coast all the way to the Golden Coast. Everything on the West Coast is going to be blue. And like I said, it's not a matter of liking or disliking, but it all comes down to recognizing the game that's stacked against you. Most state legislatures are Republican run. So a lot of these games and tricks that are played against you come from those legislatures. And then when you think of all of the governors in the 50 states, not one is black. When you think of the federal judges, very few are black. So my thing is, when it comes to the black agenda, while I feel there has to be one, understand that your agenda doesn't make any difference until you actually have money and you have influence to push said politician to do something. They'll say anything to sell a dream just to get the vote. Yeah, I'm for reparations. Yeah, I'm for making Juneteenth a national holiday. They'll do all that stuff. And then once they get in office, you get forgotten. But when you look at the Hispanic vote, they're able to come together. Like Mickey said, they have that block that can come together, they can unite, and they get that stuff done. When you look at the LGBT, I forgot the rest, but when you look at that block, they can pull together and they can get legislation pushed so people will listen to them. We're sitting around looking for handouts, but we're not really putting people, we're not holding them accountable. So I just think it's a multifaceted thing. It's more than just every 4 years. You have to look at all of it strategically, but you also have to see the game that's being run against us. And we have to play a little bit smarter than we have.
And I just want to point out, going back to what Mickey was talking about the celebrities, I just want to point out the hypocrisy of people like Diddy, and yeah, I'm calling them out, because in 2008 it was all about Barack the vote. In 2008, now in 2020 we want to withhold our vote. Why? And go same question Cassandra was saying. Why we were holding our vote? If voting was cool in 2008, then voting should be cool in 2020. If we have candidates down the ballot, not just in presidential elections, echoing what everybody here says, we have to emphasize the importance of local elections, with not just within our states, but in many cases within our cities, because a lot of people who sit on our city councils, or in our county government seats do not look like us. So how can we or how can we expect rather to have people who are going to raise our issues and they don't even look like us? They're not attached to us. They can sympathize, and sympathy and empathy is great, but it's another thing when you live this thing every day, right? If I'm scared of dogs, I don't need nobody who's scared of cats to tell me about how they understand how to be scared of dogs. No, I need somebody who's scared of dogs to help me talk about what's wrong with dogs, the reason why I'm scared of dogs. So we need to focus on not just national elections, not just state elections, but city and county elections as well.
Hey man, I want to say something real quick, and I'm gonna come right back to you, Mickey Leon. Right now, what we're talking about is the power of the vote, and that's one of the pillars of this conversation today. And I want to say to the audience, your vote is indeed powerful. And it starts just like Chris and Timothy were talking about at the local scene. Yes, November 3rd is coming, and there's a federal election. We're going to vote for the President of the United States. We're going to have several statewide elections as far as your senators And of course, every 2 years, every seat in the House comes up. But you're going to have some local stuff going on where you live too. Your mayors, your city council, your county board of supervisors, your commissioner of the revenue, your treasurer, and some cases even the city manager, the sheriff. You need to be paying very close attention to that because what happens on the local scene has way more of an effect than what happens at the local scene. And once again, I keep picking on Chris because him and I belong to the same groups. We're seeing the same things. Let me tell you, we are making a tremendous impact in the groups that we belong to on the local and state scene. And that's why I chuckle sometimes when I look at my Facebook posts and I see some of my friends on the other side. They talking, 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 but they don't know that they keep talking, but we're working. We're working behind the scenes and positive things are happening. And we have a motto that we use, and I'm going to push it to the forefront. When it comes to the power of the vote, and here is the triumph of the vote. I don't care whether you have a DRIG, whatever behind your name for your political affiliation. I want to vote for people who care about people and want to do the right thing for people. And if we can't change your mind to do what's right for people, then we're going to change your seat. You will not serve for long. And once politicians absolutely know that we're not going to vote along party lines. No, we're going to vote according to your record and your behavior. That is the power and the triumph of the vote. Mickey Leon, back on you, sir.
I'm gonna bring it home for some people real quick, right? So talking about why voting matters. What is the biggest discussion going on in the country right now? It is whether or not schools are going to open back up and how they're going to open back up in the fall. And you know who controls that decision in almost every city in the country? The school board in that city, which is those are elected officials. In, I want to say all cases, but I'm not completely sure. In most cases, those are elected officials. So you vote for that. How many people that's out there in the audience or anywhere can say that they went and they voted with the school board elections to pick the officials to be on the school board? Many people are out here. I don't want my kid to go back to school. I don't want my kid to go back to school. How are they gonna open up schools and whatnot? Well, who's on your school board? Because those people are the ones that are going to determine whether or not your kid goes back to school. Trump's not going to determine it. Northam's not going to determine it. He gave it to the localities to determine it. Your mayor is not going to determine it. Your school board is what's going to determine where your kid goes and how they go. And ultimately, that means you do, because you voted for them, or you didn't vote for them, or you didn't know anything about the election and who they are. And your school board, there are people that work next door to you. There's people that live next door to you. There's people that you see. You know, one of our school board members in Prince William County is a teacher in Fairfax County. The chairman of our school board is an eye doctor in the county. So, you know, the chairman of the school board 4 years ago was the head of President Trump's Republican campaign for Virginia. So voting is important. You worried about your school? Because I have some friends who are woke and they don't want to vote. Mm-hmm. But some of those same ones are outraged that, you know, Virginia Beach was trying to open and go face to face from day one, or other counties and stuff like that. Did you vote for the school board? Did you know that that's a position that you voted for? No, you didn't, because you're super woke. So your vote matters. You so woke, you're behind this sleep. And I've done this whole thing an hour and 18 minutes without cussing. I'm proud of myself. But get out there and look and see what votes, because your school board is going to determine what your child does for these next 180 days come Labor Day weekend. So,
all right, Mr. Wright.
Can I say something very quick?
Yes, sir.
I want to play devil's advocate for a little bit, because I think it's, in order for us to have an understanding of why people do what they do, we have to try to understand why they may do what they do versus just looking at what we think. And obviously, we know it's very important to vote. It's stupid to throw your vote away. We get it. But I feel that we're also in an age of information where a lot of people are coming into the knowledge of certain things, and it's disgusting to them. And that's where they don't see I have a win one way or the other. Like, even when you look at the front runner for the Democratic Party, he is one person that was very responsible in mass incarceration as we know it. And people have come into the knowledge of that. So why should I then just give my vote away when I know that this is an individual, one person, that was able to rally the support of a whole bunch of other people to lead to 3 strikes and all these crime bills, or the crime bill, I should say, that really led to a lot of it's something that we need to figure out. How do we leverage the knowledge that we have and the frustrations that we have and make it work for us? Because just withdrawing from the situation doesn't. But if we just continue to give our vote, because I mean, Carl knows Church of God in Christ, every convocation, they come around to come clap and sing with us, and then they disappear for another 4 years. You get our vote, and then you disappear. So I can't say that I agree, like Chris Rock said, but I understand.
Mhm.
I can understand why there's that frustration. But we need to figure out, those that have the knowledge of the importance of being able to vote, how do we leverage that frustration, and how do we leverage that knowledge so that it works for our benefit and not to our detriment?
Thank you. I want to say something right here. I meant to say this earlier. You know, we have to listen. Timothy, you just said something about, coming into the knowledge of. And man, that's a whole nother interview. I agree with you, Mickey Lane. It's so many things we can take here and do an hour apiece on this stuff. But this is the kind of stuff I look at and I think about. When you get people who argue against the restoration of voting rights, I wonder, what is your argument? A person was convicted of a felony. They've served their time. They paid their restoration. They paid their fines. They're working, mothers and fathers and business owners and taxpayers. What do you have against them having a voice in voting? What do you have against us learning the true history of our nation? We were taught a bunch of incomplete truths and lies. And some of those who we hail as the forefathers of our nation, they were flawed individuals. What's wrong with us speaking about their flaws? They're not to be glorified. They did some positive things, but they had flaws. And we're bringing it to the forefront. I wonder, what is the problem with doing what's right and telling the truth? And so I'm listening. I know many other voters are listening. And we're coming into an age, and I'm hoping that the politicians understand this, where you can't do the things that you used to do. Now, there's some people, to them, this president or their governor or their senator, whoever, has become their God. I'm going to say it again. This president or past presidents, their senator, their governor, their mayor, whoever, has become their God. And that's why they can be pulled by the nose anywhere and fall for anything. But I made this statement on one of my Facebook posts. I was angry when I wrote it. I won't do that again. But it's like those who wrap themselves in the American flag. Yeah, I love the flag. Old Glory means something to me. I lost something for Old Glory. But God is God. I love the flag, but I don't worship it. And I think I speak to many things in the Black culture when I make that statement. We're coming to a place where you can't pull what you used to pull. And I'm so glad that we're coming into the knowledge. Thank you, Brother Wright. I am so glad to see what we're seeing. And I think between now and the general election of 2024, there will be a massive change, as long as we don't take our foot off of the accelerator. I almost didn't do this today, but I was in the shower this morning thinking, I got a whole lot going on, but you know what? I can't get tired. All right, open panel. What you got? Cassandra, you've been quiet for a while. We're not gonna let you off like that.
You said open. Let me see. I don't really know.
You good? You good? We're gonna let one of these brothers speak for you then. Thank you. What you got, Chris, with that big girl? Oh, Mickey Leon took his mic off of mute.
No, somebody else. Chris, you can go ahead.
You can start this show. Go ahead.
Trust me, I'm coming.
For me, for me, man, it's just like platforms and stuff like this, right? To discuss these things. This is what we need in our community, right? So I'm looking at John Lewis's funeral and all of the coverage leading up to his funeral, right? You know who did not have coverage? They had coverage of the funeral, but all of the things that he did in his life, you know, in outlets where we meet people, where people are met, our people are met, young people are met. The black station, the black stations, they didn't cover that stuff. BET showed the funeral, but leading up to everything, leading up to it, TV1, BET, none of those things. They didn't show any of that. They didn't show any of the history. They didn't show anything to educate us and our kids and all that stuff. And all of this stuff is it is. I'm not saying it's like planned, but it's planned. It's intentional. Like we're okay as long as we can entertain. You know what I'm saying? We can get in the bubble. We can get in the bubble and we can play ball. We can, you know, sign our $1 million contracts, you know, on the field. We can, you know, go play ball for the NCAA that don't want to pay us. That's a shout out to my sister, you know, and all the work that she does with that. But when it's time, when we need to learn something, where is our outlets? Where are our outlets? What happened to Teen Summit on BET? You know, I feel like everybody here might be old enough to at least vaguely remember Teen Summit, right?
I remember.
Like that's an opportunity to teach these kids, man. Like you could do Teen Summit on Snapchat, you could do it on you could do it on Instagram, all of this stuff. As long as we dancing, playing ball, doing all this stuff, we good. But like the white lady on Fox News said, shut up and dribble, right? Shut up and play ball, like she said to LeBron. Because when it comes time to conversations like this, they don't want us to have it. And when we do have it, they villainize us. You know, they villainize us. We're being rowdy. We protested. We're rioting in the street. America was built on protesting and rioting. America was built on that. That is literally how the country gained its independence from Great Britain. It was literally rioting in the streets and protesting. So how you gonna look at me when I'm out here with Black Lives Matter and I'm out here doing my thing, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether you agree with that, but I'm out here trying to get rights for my people, and I'm talking about what is important to me as a taxpaying citizen in this country. You can be mad or you can scream, you're not a patriot. You're not a patriot. Do you even know what patriotism means? Literally rioting in the streets against British soldiers. If you want to take it back there, let's not even go with the black folks in Africa. Let's go back to our forefathers, as they want to say, right? 1776 and even before that. They're fighting. They're protesting. They got militias that start in trouble to get what they wanted. We out here starting, you know, good trouble, as John Lewis would say, right? You know, protesting to get what we want, and now all of a sudden it's a problem. But it's not a problem. It's a problem because your skin is dark, because you have melanin in your skin. That's the problem. It's because you are starting to realize your power. They're afraid we're going to realize our power. They're afraid we're going to realize our value. They're afraid we're going to realize our worth. They're afraid that we're going to step up and be ready to become like AOC and hold seats in positions that could threaten those generations that I was talking about earlier. You know, it could threaten that power, the baby boomer generation, the generation before that. It could threaten that. So that's the problem. And that is where we need our leaders that we talked about, our local leaders, our people, you know, to help spread that message so that the young folks don't get out here and see just what's going on social media and just what's going on TV and become disenfranchised to the other point that we was talking about, right? Like, oh yeah, well, my vote don't matter. Nah, dude, your vote matters. Your vote matters more than your vote arguably might matter more than my vote. If you're 18, my 17-year-old daughter, that'll be 18 next year. Her vote arguably might matter a little bit more than my vote because she's 18 and she's a whole nother generation of people in her age group that needs to collectively vote so that in 10 years, they're not still dealing with the same then 90-year-old people in Congress that we're dealing with. Yeah, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. She's a Democrat, but she's 80 years old. She shouldn't even be outside. Like in COVID, she shouldn't even be outside. What are you doing? You know, like, so yeah, that's my open mic point. You know, it's just Be a leader
And
in your community. Be a
yeah,
leader on your
I'm
platform.
not on that one.
You know, teach everybody, teach your kids, and educate your white friends. I would say that I got white friends who have asked legitimate questions like, I don't understand what Black Lives Matter mean. I feel like all lives matter. Can you help me understand what that means? And I've taught them and what it means. And they've come back and been like, you know what? I never thought about it like that. I get it. So we have a responsibility to educate those around us. So
All right, Cassandra, before the men jump in, I saw you come off of mute. Did you have something?
Oh, yeah, just when he was bringing up like LeBron James and shut up and dribble, and I think it was Tim that brought up earlier the essential poll tax that's on voters in Florida. Well, LeBron's through his More Than a Vote initiative, they're paying some of the fees for the felons who fall in that category in Florida, and just how important it is. And in this new age of athlete activism, and seeing all of those things is just great. And I hope that it could get people's attention, like young people's attention and stuff, and make them pay more attention and actually go out and vote. That's all I had.
All right, we got it. Thank you. All right, there he is, Mr. Tucker.
Oh yeah, I told you I was coming. If I can piggyback off of what Mickey was talking about, where was BET, right? When John Lewis died, the John Lewis died on a Friday. FX aired Selma all weekend long, from Friday night to Sunday morning. They aired Selma all weekend long. What was BET airing? Tyler Perry's House of Pain.
Wow.
Why? This is our history, but somebody else got to tell our story. Why? And the Prophet Childish Gambino did something completely radical and absolutely necessary when he made the video for This Is America, right? And it goes right to what Mickey was saying. As we're watching this video, and he and these kids are out front dancing while absolute chaos is going on behind the scenes, but you can't see the chaos because of the swagged out dance moves and all this other stuff that's going on right here in front of your face. Take your eyes off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Stop being entertained. Stop being lulled into a false sense of complacency and take a look at what's going on around you. We're dying. This country is literally burning to the ground for people that are crying out to change. But yet we're too busy being entertained by the NBA and all of these other sports who can't put sports on hold, even for a global pandemic. Even for a global pandemic, we're still trying to find a way to be entertained. But yet we're still sitting here talking about why it's so important to vote in the Black community. Why? I think this is a failure on. I'm just gonna say I think this is a failure on our part to not teach each other, and I think that's the reason why what Mickey said was so important. We have to teach each other. We have to reach out to each other. We have to educate each other, right? Those of us who are strong in our history, we have to reach back and teach others on who C.T. Vivian is, who John Lewis is, who Bayard Rustin is, who was the one who actually organized the March on Washington. Many people don't even know who he is,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's incumbent upon people like our sister Cassandra who know the law to reach out and say, hey, this is what your legal rights are in this particular area, right? It's important for us to come on these platforms and have these conversations so that we can, adequately pass down this knowledge to the next generation. And it goes back to the very first question that we were asking: what are we doing about leadership? That is leadership. Right? You don't have to have the bullhorn. You don't have to have the microphone. You don't have to have your face plastered all over the news media. Everybody reaching somebody is a level of leadership, empowering and impacting somebody else for positive change. And that includes fighting for voter registration rights or the restoration of rights. It means getting out there with the election committee and volunteering your time. It means, knowing who your school board people are, right?
Mhm.
It involves all of that, and it starts at home. And home is where we're having this conversation, and we have to do better. We have to do more, and it's time for that.
All right. That was awesome. Listen, y'all, we're about to wrap, but as we wrap up, what I want to do is give everybody an opportunity for closing statements. All right. I'm going to start with Timothy Wright. I'll go to Cassandra, and then Mickey, and then we're going to go to Chris Tucker. And this is your time, your closing comments, whether it be about Congressman Lewis, the power or the triumph of the vote, whatever you want as we close out. All right, Mr. Wright.
Thank you. Had a little technical difficulty, but all I could say is I think the blueprint has been given by Congressman Lewis, along with so many other greats. But I just think that we need to see this as a very pivotal moment where we see the urgency of now, where we see the value in bringing up a generation behind us to fill in our shoes. Now, I got the tail end of what Chris was saying. As a teacher, I know that when you give a student a responsibility, they take responsibility once you give it to them.
Mhm.
It's very hard to replace a generation of leadership that won't let go of that microphone, that won't let go of that bullhorn, and won't empower young people to lead. Leadership isn't something that's innate, something you just know how to do. Not for most people. It's something that's learned. It's something that's taught. So I feel that this transition period, with the passing of Congressman Lewis, we really need to see it as a great opportunity to start raising up a generation, actually giving them opportunities to lead. Don't look down on them because of how they may talk, how they may dress. If you don't find any similar interests, or, we have to bridge that gap when it comes to generations, but it's going to take sacrifice. And sometimes it's sacrifice of ego so that we can empower somebody else to lead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Cassandra.
Um, yes, I would just like to say that there's no way that you can be moved by the events of this year, whether it's COVID or Black Lives Matter, and not realize your responsibility to vote. You have a civic responsibility to vote, and that you should and are almost required to exercise. And to the point of leadership, when leaders emerge, support them if you agree with their ideologies. Find people who you align with their ideologies and support them.
Amen. Thank you so much. All right, Mickey Leon.
I don't know. I said a lot. So I just want to say, voting is important at all levels. It's even more important at the local level, as we've pointed out today. So anybody that's out there, looking or wondering what you can do, go vote. Take somebody with you. Take somebody that's not old enough to vote yet. Take them with you so that they can understand and they can see what that means to vote, and why it's important to take a moment out of your day to do it. And then show them some of the things. If you don't know, look it up. Show them some of the things that voting has done. People always ask, what has voting done for Black people? What has voting done for Black people? Look and see what voting has done for Black people. It's done quite a bit. And if you're looking for a quote unquote Black agenda, understand that the Black agenda is not going to, in 2020, only encompass Black people. And I say that, and I'm gonna say this real quick. There's nothing out here that white people can go do that we can go do in terms of applying for things, applying for the same loans like that. There's no things that are set aside just for white people. There are rules and laws put in place to make it harder for Black people to attain the same things, but I can go and apply for the same loan that my white neighbor can go apply for. Now, will I get it at the same success level that they will? Well, that depends on the different laws and rules and the people that are the gatekeepers to that money. So the Black agenda is largely going to end up being an agenda that helps some other people too, but we need to put the right people in place to make sure that the Black people, our communities, we get our portion of whatever comes from that. So getting off our behinds and going to be those leaders and those people that will funnel those ideas that we talked about earlier and put them in front of the people that make the decisions so that we can get what we need. So all of that to say, voting matters, go vote, teach your kids, teach other people, and just continue to have conversations like this and bring some other ethnicities, bring some white folks into these conversations with you, just to be an audience at some point so they can understand what it is that we're out here talking about and trying to do. So that's it.
Thank you, brother. All right, Mr. Tucker.
First of all, thank you for having this conversation, and thank you for thinking enough of me to have me be a part of this. I want to say to my fellow Black brothers and sisters, we saw the power of our vote in 2008 when Barack Obama was elected the 44th president of the United States, when we turned out in record numbers that we had never seen prior to 2008. And if you go back and look at the data, we've not seen those numbers again. I think it's time for 2020 to be that same record-breaking year, and every year for that matter, to be those record-breaking turnout numbers in our community. So for that, I do say rest in power to John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, both of whom we lost on the same day. Thank you to our Black women who constantly stand with us and support us, and also want to say that we need more Black women in positions and places of power. To our allies, I want to say thank you for standing with us. Keep pushing, keep listening, keep learning, and thank you for your fight. But last but not least, I want to say to the state of Kentucky, we still have not forgotten that Breonna Taylor's killers have not been arrested. And please believe you are on the chopping block.
All right, thank you. This panel, I'm really so proud of you. For those of you who didn't catch it, Mickey and Leon and Cassandra are my younger cousins. And this is the first time that both of them have been on a panel with me. I'm so proud of them and watching them from the time they were little teeny things. Matter of fact, I think Cassandra was born the year I graduated high school. So it's just an amazing journey to see them become who they are. And then to Mr. Tucker and Mr. Wright, who are younger brothers. I ain't gonna say little brothers, because they might be a little quicker than me with their hands, but younger brothers. They are just awesome. This is the millennial bunch who have brought forth such tremendous ideas and information, and I'm just so proud of them. I'll say this: one of the many reasons why I come on is not just to talk amongst us, but there are many detractors, and whether you know it or not, many of the detractors do listen to these conversations, and they watch. And I want people to see that what you see on TV with the looters and the rioters, I don't consider them members of the movement per se. That's something else. When you think of the movement, I want you to think about what you see. And what you see is positive. All right. Once again, I'll say I don't agree with looting and rioting, but I understand the anger that will push some of them to do it. But if we're going to be honest about that, we know that much of that is not us. Much of that is a whole nother group and a whole nother movement. And I will be so glad when we get to the day that you all who are detractors stop mixing them in with us. So, to Congressman John Lewis's family, please know that we're praying for you. If we feel his loss, we could only imagine what you feel. You loaned him to us, and now he belongs to the ages, and we appreciate your sacrifice along with him. To my parents, and to the parents of these young people here and their grandparents who are part of the struggle and are now our family elders, we stand on your shoulders. It was your sacrifice and your teaching that got us here today, and we bless God for you. We thank you. For our audience who have been so patient with us, we're at an hour and 43 minutes now. Thank you so much. You've been gracious with your time. You've been gracious with your comments and your questions. And once again, I'll tell you, if you want to keep up, you can follow me on Facebook. Go to I have a public page, Carl Armstrong, or you can go to YouTube. My YouTube channel is Carl's Conversations, just like you see it spelled on my name tag, all one word. If you use two words, you go into another Carl. He has a conversation, but he's not me. Carl's Conversations, all one word. And I appreciate if you subscribe so you can understand what's going on. We're going to do this every Saturday as long as the Lord says so. So thank you so much for all of your time and attention. Once again, panel, you were wonderful and you're gracious with your time today. Thank you so much. So until next time, we say God bless you and may heaven smile upon you. Good afternoon.